Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. Hotep, hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. So it's Black History Month, African American History Month. And I wanted to talk about a topic that ties into this year's annual theme for Black History Month, which is Black resistance and Black resistance movements. But part of that is how we fought back economically against white supremacy and racism. So today we're going to look at how African people used cooperative economics to fight back against white supremacy and racism. And this is part of the Black resistance movement as well. Also, I'll give you information about a free lecture that I'm doing on Saturday, February 4th, 2023, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, dealing with Black resistance movements and the origins of Black History Month. Okay, so visit our website, TheAHNShow.com, TheAHNShow.com, and register for that free lecture that I'm doing. Okay. African American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast, and we'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network also. Okay. Our current promotion is buy 1 month, get 1 month free. And this is the time to advertise because this is Black History Month. Okay, so let's look at this information here. I've talked about this before, and I did presentations in 2022 for Liberated Minds Black Homeschooling Education Expo, and also Repaired Nations as well, along dealing with this topic also. Okay. So we have a deep, rich history of cooperative economics. And this presentation is how African people used, let me bring this up, how African people used cooperative economics to fight back against white supremacy and racism. Okay. So we have a deep, rich history of cooperative economics, but a lot of people don't know this. All right. So what are co-ops? What are co-ops? The Black cooperative movement has always been parallel to the Black liberation and civil rights movements. We've mostly heard about the political side of the movement, but you can't name a major political leader that did not point to cooperatives as a pathway to freedom, said Dr. Jessica Gordon Nemhard, who's the author of the book Collective Courage, which deals with the history of African American cooperatives. Now, I first found out about her in this article from 2014 from newsone.com called Stop Saying Black People Don't Support Each Other Economically. Stop saying Black people don't support each other economically. And I interviewed her back in 2014, and also I read her book as well, Collective Courage. This book right here, Collective Courage, A History of African American Cooperative Economic Thought and Practice by Dr. Jessica Gordon Nemhard. And she's one of the top scholars when it comes to the history of African American co-ops, okay, and cooperative economics. So if we go back and let me go back to the PowerPoint presentation here. And African American business owners also post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast as well. So when we celebrate Kwanzaa, okay, one of the 7 principles of the Nguzo Saba is Ujamaa, which is cooperative economics. But a lot of times people get cooperative economics confused with just Black capitalism. Okay, or white capitalism dressed up in red, black, and green, and that gets passed off as cooperative economics. So when we look at the 4th principle of Kwanzaa, which is Ujamaa, to build and maintain our own stores, shops, and other businesses, and to profit from them together, to build and maintain our own stores, shops, and businesses, and to profit from them together. Now, Dr. W.B. Du Bois, speaking about economics when it comes to African Americans. He said that there exists today a chance for Blacks to organize a cooperative state within their own group. There exists today a chance for Blacks to organize a cooperative state within their own group by letting Negro farmers feed Negro artisans and Negro technicians guide Black home industries, and Black thinkers plan this integration of cooperation, while Black artists dramatize and beautify the struggle. Economic independence can be achieved. To doubt that this is possible is to doubt the essential humanity and the equality of brains of Black people. Now, there was a good article from abcnews.com that talked about mutual aid networks find roots in communities of color. So we're going to see that one of the types of cooperatives that we had were the mutual aid societies, and these are going to be some of the first types of co-ops that we had, the mutual aid societies. Amid the unfolding disaster of COVID-19, have been moments of generosity, whether it's people pulling together, support for college students who've been tossed out of college dorms, or collective money to help restaurant workers, street vendors, and movie theater employees pay for their medicine, groceries, and rent. The mutual aid support networks in which communities take responsibility to care for one another, rather than leaving individuals to fend for themselves, have proliferated across the country as the pandemic turns lives upside down. Now, the nonprofit called Town Hall Project created Mutual Aid Hub, which is a collection of it's a tracking system to track the various collective efforts, these various cooperatives. All right. So they created a mutual aid hub to track all the various collective efforts when the coronavirus began its rapid global spread in March of 2020. Back then, it counted only 50 mutual aid groups, but by May 2020, the number had grown to more than 800 in 48 states. It grew to more than 800 in 48 states. Now, this was driven by what the hub's lead organizer, Shivani Desi, called a grassroots explosion of organizing. Now, while these informal networks have sprouted up in response to the coronavirus pandemic, mutual aid organizers and scholars say they have existed long before then. So this taps into our history of cooperative economics, how we were able to fight back against white supremacy and racism, how we were able to survive, okay? And a lot of times, either we think we don't have a history of economics, economic empowerment, or anything like that, or we'll focus in on white capitalism, but not deal with the co-ops. And these were principles that we brought with us from Africa, Okay, the concept of the cooperatives, these are principles that we brought with us from Africa. Okay, now while these informal networks have sprouted up in response to the pandemic, mutual aid organizers and scholars say they have existed long before then. Few people are aware of their deep roots in communities of color where such networks have been built for centuries. Now, the concept of cooperating and pooling resources within a community is rooted in communities of color, said Margot Dalal, executive director of Detroit Community Wealth Fund, and an Indian American woman. Now, Dr. Jessica Gordon Nimhard, author of the book Collective Courage, that I just showed you right here, this book here, Collective Courage, A History of African American Cooperative Economic Thought and Practice. Okay, author of this book. Dr. Jessica Gordon Nimhard said Black mutual aid societies date back to the 1700s. Okay, now this is during slavery here in the US. Free African Americans pooled resources to buy farms and land, care for widows and children, and bury their dead. Many started credit unions when banks would not serve them. Sociologist and civil rights leader Dr. W.B. Du Bois wrote about enslaved African Americans pooling money together to buy each other's freedom. So we have these examples throughout history, okay? And in the free lecture that I'm doing, the Black History Month lecture that I'm doing on Saturday, February 4th, 2023, you can register for it at our website, TheAHNShow.com, dealing with Black resistance movements. We're going to talk about some of this and some of this history of Black resistance movements, as well as economic empowerment as well among our people, also as a way to fight back against white supremacy and as a form of Black resistance as well. Okay, how's everybody doing today? Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. And African American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. And our current promotion we have going on for a few more days is buy 1 month, get 1 month free. We'll give you information about that. So we were pulling our money together to buy farms, but also to buy loved ones, buy each other out of slavery. Now, the African Union Society in Rhode Island was established in 1780 as the first Black mutual aid society on record, Dr. Jessica Gordon Nimhard said. The second African American cooperative or mutual aid society on record was the Free African Society, founded in Philadelphia in 1787, the Free African Society. And it was founded to provide aid to freed African slaves who were denied resources by white institutions. One of the most famous examples of mutual aid are the Black Panther survival programs for the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, the Black Panther survival programs from the late 1960s, through which members distributed shoes, transported senior citizens to grocery stores, offered breakfast programs to children, and a lot more. The medical services they provided, sickle cell anemia services, different things like this. The programs that the Black Panther Party had, I really think, are undervalued when we study this history. Okay, we'll focus on the guns and the black berets and the black leather jackets, things like this, but not as much on the programs that they created to meet the needs of the people. That was extremely important. Okay, let's continue. Now, in many major cities, More than half of African Americans were part of at least one mutual aid society by the 1800s. In more than in many major cities in the U.S., more than half of the African American population were part of at least one mutual aid society by the 1800s, according to Dr. Jessica Gordon Nemhard. Well over half of the societies she's researched were started and run by African American women who continue to be vital in mutual aid networks. Now, Dr. Jessica Gordon Nemhard said she believes mutual aid is part of the history of all communities, but especially of communities of color, okay, that face obstacles accessing resources. And this is the mutual aid societies are crucial when we study the history of African Americans. Quote, mutual aid and co-ops are a way for groups that have faced discrimination to have some level of economic stability. Part of my work is to remind African Americans that mutual aid is part of their history too. And see, the problem is that we don't understand our history. So a lot of us think it was white capitalism, or really don't understand how we were able to survive economically. But it's with the co-ops, okay? And that, and you know, my degree's in business administration with a major in marketing. And when in business school, you know, I graduated from Wayne State University here in Detroit, and in Wayne State's business school, we learned white business principles. We largely did not learn about the cooperatives and really didn't learn about the role that they played when it came to African American history. And I started learning that, studying African history while I was at Wayne State, African history and African American history. I started learning that outside of the class, outside of the business school. But what happened is that a lot of African Americans ended up going to white business schools and learning white business principles. And then we try to bring those white business principles back to our communities and implement them. And they don't work for the masses. Okay, they may work for individuals. They may work for your family, but for the community, they don't. For the masses of African Americans, they don't work like the cooperatives actually work. But if you don't understand that history, if you think that cooperatives um, um, are just something that, you know, white hippies do or something like that, and you don't understand that we have a deep, rich history in that, and these are principles that we brought with us from Africa, then you'll the best you may do is to dress up white capitalism in red, black, and green, okay, and try to pass it off as black capitalism or black empowerment or something like that. So we have to understand the difference. Okay, so check out this article. This is a really good article from ABC News, abcnews.go.com or abcnews.com. Mutual aid networks find roots in communities of color. This is from January 2nd, 2021. Okay, then we have the example of Berry Gordy. So I live in Detroit. We know the history of Berry Gordy. A lot of people know the history. I don't know if young people know the history of Berry Gordy and Motown Records, but he got an $800 loan to start Motown Records. He got an $800 loan from his family's Bearberry Co-op. His family's Bearberry Co-op. And Berry Gordy set out in 1959 to apply some of the principles he learned in the auto plant working in Detroit to the production of records and the creation of music groups and solo artists. He envisioned a process by which a kid could walk in one door, an unknown off the street, and come out the other, a polished performer. At the Motown Museum's website, they have some historical information. They have some historical information dealing with Berry Gordy and how he got the seed money to start Motown Records. Now, if you look at some other examples of SUSUs, if you look at some other examples of cooperative economics, we look at the SUSU system from West Africa. Okay. In parts of West Africa and the Caribbean, an ancient version of cooperative economics exists called SUSU. An ancient version of cooperative economics exists called SUSU, S-U-S-U, as one of the oldest forms of microfinance in Africa. The practice is run by one of Africa's oldest financial groups called SUSU collectors. They run their business from kiosks in the marketplace and as mobile bankers. Now, clients make low but regular deposits on a daily or weekly basis over the course of a month into a SUSU account. At the end of the period, the SUSU collector returns the accumulated savings to the client, but keeps one day's savings as commission. Now, SUSU collectors may also provide advances to their clients or rotate the accumulated deposits of a group between individual members. Today, SUSU collectors provide many West Africans who would otherwise be denied credit with access to money they need to start up small venture projects that in many cases benefit the community as a whole, that in many cases benefit the community as a whole. In the United States, Black immigrants from the Caribbean have enjoyed one of the highest economic growth rates using a form of the SUSU and leveraging this practice to establish successful credit unions. So we have this in our history, okay? We have these examples in our history. We have these cultural practices of economic empowerment, but unfortunately, many of us don't understand our history, don't know our history, okay? So we then try to, just imitate what's presented to us and don't understand how one of the ways that our brothers and sisters from the Caribbean are able to make advances in this country. All right, African American business owners, post name your business here on the thread of the broadcast, and also email us at AHNshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AHNshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and we'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. Okay. Our current promotion is buy 1 month, get 1 month free. And we'll take your 30-second and 60-second ad and put it into the rebroadcast of our shows also. Okay. All right, let's continue here. Let's see. Now, the Free African Society, 1787, Richard Allen, Absalom Jones. This is one of the early, this is basically like the second recorded mutual aid society that we had, the Free African Society. Now, in 1787, Richard Allen and Absalom Jones, two prominent African-American ministers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, formed the Free African Society of Philadelphia, which was a mutual aid and religious organization. Now, the organization functioned, and just a second, let me pull something up here. Okay, so the organization functioned as both a mutual aid society and as a club where members of Philadelphia's Black elite could socialize and forge business relationships with one another. By 1794, the Free African Society had become large enough to accomplish its original goal when members built their own house of worship, which was called St. Thomas African Episcopal Church. St. Thomas African Episcopal Church. Now, we go and we look at the 1700s, right? And in the names of some of our organizations, we have the name African in them, or Africa, Free African Society, African Methodist Episcopal Church, St. Thomas African Episcopal Church, Grand African Lodge, dealing with the Prince Hall and the Prince Hall Masons. So we had this, we still had a connection to Africa. But as you go into the early 1900s, we start seeing the term colored being used. Okay. You look at, and the term African American, that was first, that dates back to 1782 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The term African American. The term Afro American dates back to the 1830s. Okay, and then we look at 1892. You have the National Afro-American League. Okay, the National Afro-American League, and then you have the 1898. You have the Afro-American Council, founded by T. Thomas Fortune, and Bishop Alexander Walters. Okay, so we're going to see in our history, we're going to see these terms being used, the term African, when we name our organizations, okay? And we're going to see in the early 1900s, the term colored being used also. You may see colored in the late 1800s, but you still see the term Afro being used, like the Baltimore Afro-American newspaper. The Baltimore is created in like about the 1880s or so, black newspaper. All right, now, Free African Society, 1787. Now, in addition to providing assistance to the sick, widowed, and orphaned members of Philadelphia's Black community, the Free African Society also extended its help to the cities at large. It also extended its help to the cities at large. The society's most famous contribution was the help members provided during the yellow fever epidemic in 1793, which killed thousands of Philadelphians. There's a good article from blackpast.org, called Free African Society, that gives you some background history on this mutual aid society. So then we have the Colored Merchants Association. This is one of my favorite co-ops, the Colored Merchants Association. And the Colored Merchants Association was created around 1928. It comes out of the National Negro Business League, created in 1900 by Booker T. Washington. Now, in 1928, the National Negro Business League of Montgomery, Alabama, established the Colored Merchants Association, the CMA, the Colored Merchants Association, which is a cooperative organization of African-American owned grocery stores, a cooperative organization of African-American owned grocery stores. And they're going to grow to have, when we look at grocery stores in this country, at one time we had, we look in the early 1900s, we had hundreds of African-American owned grocery stores across the country. Today, it's probably less than 100. I haven't seen exact numbers, but it's probably less than 100 nationwide that are African American owned. The purpose of the organization was to reduce the operating costs of Black retailers through mutual aid support. Okay. The purpose of the organization was to reduce the operating costs of Black retailers through mutual support, cooperative buying, and collective marketing. So they were pulling their resources together to get economies of scale. They have cooperative buying, collective marketing, and taking out ads in newspapers, things like this, pulling their resources together to market. Um, and they did all this in a harsh market dominated by white-owned chain stores, and they were trying to compete better with the white-owned chain stores. Okay. Okay, like the Woolworths and the Kresge's, things like this. Okay, let's continue. Now, the Color Merchants Association, spread to nearly 18 cities across the country, including Chicago, Philadelphia, Nashville, Dallas, and New York. The CMA built its national headquarters in New York City in October 1929. Chapters were organized in cities with 10 or more stores. The Color Merchants Association members paid $5 per month per store and were required to meet designated standards. By 1930, there were 253 Black-owned grocery stores that were part of the Colored Merchants Association network. 253 Black-owned grocery stores, okay, by 1930. They were part of the Colored Merchants Association. Now, the CMA model was markedly successful. Associated stores reported increases in business and profits. Members received services from the association, such as intensive training in merchandising techniques, sales training, advertising, and management resources, such as market analysis, inventory, and bookkeeping systems, and collection and credit procedures. So you'll have some like Black chambers of commerce, like local Black chambers of commerce. You'll have some that offer different services like this. But here you had where they're doing, they're not just offering services on marketing, etc., but they're also pulling their resources together to buy in bulk, get economies of scale. So they're doing all of this, okay, with the Colored Merchants Association. So members receive support services from the association, such as intensive training in merchandising techniques, sales training, advertising, and management resources, such as market analysis, inventory, and bookkeeping systems, and collection and credit procedures. So it's really going through showing them how to own a business. And the reason why this is so important is because a lot of our businesses that we own today, the paperwork is not correct. So they can't qualify for government contracts, city government, things like this. They're and when it comes to getting various types of government aid or loans from the Small Business Association or anything like that, where you need to have your paperwork in order, a lot of them don't have the paperwork in order, so they can't take advantage of opportunities like that. All right, now the colored, another really popular cooperative that we had, and probably the largest, because this grew to have 1.2 million members. The Colored Farmers National Alliance and Cooperative Unions, the CFACU, founded in 1886 in Texas. The Colored Farmers National Alliance and Cooperative Union, the CFACU. So the Colored Farmers National Alliance and Cooperative was formed in 1886 in Texas. Despite the fact that both Black and white farmers faced great difficulties due to the rising price of farming and the decreasing profits that were coming from farming, the protective organization known as the Southern Farmers Alliance, did not allow Black farmers to join. Okay, the Southern Farmers Alliance did not allow African American farmers to join. So a group of Black farmers decided to organize their own alliance to fill their need. Okay, so here, see, this is a form of Black resistance because they're trying to force us into bankruptcy on the farms, lock us out of opportunity, lock us out of the ability to be able to compete against the white farmers. So we're organizing ourselves to pull resources together and to stay alive, but keep our farms profitable and also be able to hold on to our land. Okay, now we're going to lose millions of acres of land, various reasons. I mean, the Great Depression was devastating. We lost about 200,000 farms just from 1930 to 1939. When you look at the devastation that the Great Depression had on African Americans and in land ownership. Okay, so the Colored Farmers National Alliance and Cooperative Union operated under fear and harassment by white farmers. But managed to operate several cooperatives in the late 19th century before having to disband. So this organization, they only last about 5 or 6 years, and they have to disband to save their lives because they're getting so many death threats and being attacked by Europeans, being attacked by white supremacists. Okay, if you don't like us, why don't you just leave us the hell alone? All right. So you don't want us in your white farmers union, okay, the Southern Farmers Alliance. You don't want us in that. We form our own cooperative and you still attack us. If you don't like us so much, why don't you just leave us the hell alone? So they operated under fear and harassment by white farmers, but managed to operate several cooperatives in the late 19th century before having to disband. Now, we'll come back to this here. So African American business owners, we have 3 new ad packages for you to advertise with the African History Network. Our current promotion is buy 1 month, get 1 month free. We reach thousands of people across the country on a daily basis. And we take your 30-second to 60-second ad and put it into the rebroadcast of our shows, the African History Network show and broadcasts I do throughout the week. But then also we put it into the audio podcast of our broadcast as well. So we're on 9 different audio podcast platforms. We're on Castbox, FM Player, TuneIn, iTunes, iHeartRadio. We're on 9 different audio podcast platforms. And we know a lot of you want to advertise for African American History Month, for Black History Month. So this is the opportunity to do that. Email us at AHNShow at TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Email us at AHNShow at TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. and we'll email you the information. We can get you up and running today. And you may have a brick and mortar store. You may have a e-commerce store. Doesn't matter. You may sell African cultural and African American products, clothes, etc. You may have a physical bookstore or e-commerce bookstore. You may sell health and beauty products, clothing, shoes, African garb, African American history books, fiction. You may have an education. You may be in education. You may have a homeschooling network, or you may have curriculums, etc. Books for African American children's, African American parents to use to educate their children. You may have courses. You may have courses in finance, personal finance, etc. You may have an event coming up. Okay, whether it's a Black History Month event that you want to market. You may have a conference, seminars. You may sell African jewelry. You may be into fitness. Maybe a personal trainer, have a fitness website, sell fitness clothing, etc. You can advertise with the African History Network. Okay, so email us at AHNShow at TheAHNShow.com, AHNShow at TheAHNShow.com to advertise with the African History Network. And okay, here we go. All right, let's continue here. So let me go back to the PowerPoint presentation here. All right, there was a good article from Vice.com. Okay, Vice.com that dealt with how Black co-ops can fight institutional racism. How Black co-ops can fight institutional racism. This is from August 9th, 2016. And in this article, it's a pretty extensive article, but in this article, they interviewed Dr. Jessica Gordon Nimhard also. And a portion of this article, it says, she was asked the question, how do co-ops function in a capitalistic system? How do cooperatives, especially African-American cooperatives, function within a capitalistic system? Now, the Colored Merchants Association, these were Black-owned grocery stores. So they are engaging in capitalism, but they also form cooperatives. All right. So we have to understand how to engage in both. You're dealing with a larger capitalistic system, but we can still form cooperatives where we pull resources together and work together and still engage in a capitalistic system. So we have examples all over the world, and sometimes how that looks is it's a small enterprise that allows smaller individuals to compete. It's a small enterprise that allows smaller individuals to compete. Take a group like Land of Lakes, which is one of the largest agricultural corporations. It is actually a cooperative of dairy farmers that all own Land of Lakes together. It is actually a cooperative of dairy farmers that all own Land of Lakes together equally. And Land of Lakes buys its milk and produces and Land of Lakes buys its milk and produces all of the dairy products. Now, so the co-op has the factories, owns the factories, does all of the production, does all of the marketing, handles the business side. That frees the farmers up to do their dairy farming, knowing that they have a market. Individually, they would not be able to afford a production plant or afford all of the advertising. But owning it all together, the individual farmers can now afford to compete. And the individual farmers, they're competing against the corporate owned farms. Okay. So this is something like what the Colored Merchants Association was doing with African American owned grocery stores and allowing them to survive and allowing them to compete. So she was asked the question, what role has cooperative economics played in Black communities in the US? Now, African Americans have engaged in some form of collective economics throughout our entire history in America. Sometimes it was tilling kitchen gardens on Sundays when we weren't working as enslaved people and sharing the produce. Sometimes it was putting in dues to bury loved ones. By the 1700s and 1800s, we had more formalized systems of collective economics that were more enterprise driven, like insurance companies and collective farming, Eventually, we had collective grocery stores, credit unions, and healthcare. Europeans eventually recognized the model around 1844, and it formally came to the US. African Americans then started forming official co-ops in the 1860s and 1870s. By the 1880s, labor unions were actually helping workers to start their own co-ops, and African Americans were involved in that too. So we have a deep, rich history, not just in economic empowerment and business ownership, but also in cooperative economics. Now, what's the relationship between segregation and cooperative economics? Okay, now one of the things we learn when we study cooperative economics is the stronger co-ops have members who have a strong sense of camaraderie. Stronger co-ops have members who have a strong sense of camaraderie. So how do you find people who already have that feeling and get them to do co-ops? For African Americans, sometimes it was already being involved in church or an activity that made you want to do more for your community. Sometimes it was because they had nothing and they pulled together just to survive. And sometimes they were already politically active, and then they realized being politically active made them economically vulnerable. Okay, so what happens is if you they may get fired from their job for being politically active if they're working for somebody white, or the bank, you may be a farmer and you're politically active, you're African American, and then the white bank calls in the loan on your bank. Okay, and you're going to have instances where we pull resources together to help African American farmers save their farms when their loan gets called in. This now, when you study the White Citizens Council, the White Citizens Council in it starts in Mississippi in 1954 as a backlash to Brown versus Board of Education, U.S. Supreme Court case. And then the White Citizens Councils are going to spread throughout the South. And these were formed by white businessmen and bankers. You're going to have some ministers in there as well. Plantation owners, landowners, farmers, white farmers, etc. And they're forming this organization to maintain segregation and to help lock us out of opportunity, but also to punish those who were wanted to register to vote, those who are attacking segregation. That white people were trying to maintain their way of life, which included white privilege. and segregation in Mississippi. And we know that segregation was written into the Mississippi State Constitution. Poll taxes and literacy tests were written into the Mississippi State Constitution. But the White Citizens Council, we're going to see this spread throughout the South. When we look at Fannie Lou Hamer, Fannie Lou Hamer was fired from the cotton plantation that her entire family worked on. She was like the youngest of 19 children, if I remember correctly. She registered to vote. She registered to vote in Mississippi and got fired from the plantation that her entire family worked on. She was a sharecropper. Got fired from the plantation her entire family worked on because she dared to register to vote. So this is the type. So when you have African Americans, especially in the South, who became politically active, oftentimes there was a backlash to that, or it could be a physical backlash, being attacked, being killed, etc. Okay, Dr. W.B. Du Bois said that we need to self-segregate so that we can create this, create that sense of solidarity and use an economic structure that recognizes that sense of solidarity to create economic prosperity for all of us. And from that position of strength, we can go back out to the rest of the world. Either integrate if we want to, or at least demand our rights and demand equal footing. Okay, so this is a good article from Vice.com. This is just an excerpt of the article called How Black Co-ops Can Fight Institutional Racism from Vice.com from August 9th, 2016. Okay, now, Saturday, February 4th, 2023, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm doing a free Black History Month lecture, Black Resistance Movements, and we'll deal with the Black History Month origins as well. We'll talk about Dr. Carter G. Woodson. We'll deal with some of the origins of Black History Month, African American History Month, but we'll deal with this year's annual theme is Black Resistance Movements, okay? There's been an annual theme for African American History Month going back to 1928, And Black History Month is not something that white people created and gave us. We created that for ourselves. That's Dr. Carter G. Woodson and Association for the Study of Negro Life and History that he co-founded September 9th, 1915 in Chicago. Okay, we created that ourselves. That's not something we asked white people permission to do. And oftentimes we demean and diminish our own accomplishments, okay, thinking that white people gave us something. No, we created that. And that's out of self-determination, okay? So visit our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have the information right on the homepage. You scroll down right below the information about our radio show. We have the information about the lecture. So we'll talk about some Black resistance movements and throughout history. Also, we'll deal with some of the history of African American History Month, Black History Month. And I'll give we'll do a overview. We'll do an intro to a new 12-week online class that we have starting up on Saturday, February 11th. 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade. Okay, so we have a new session of that starting up as well. So we have the information right on the homepage of our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. So when you scroll down the page, you'll see the information dealing with my radio show, the African History Network show, Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can also listen to the show in audio podcast format. Click right here for that. We have our PayPal and Cash App information. You can support the African History Network, $, The AHN Show through Cash App, $ The AHN Show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/The AHN Show. And then you'll see the information here for the free lecture. Just click right here, register here, and you can register for it. Okay. And this is the current class we have going on right now. It's about the end, but you can register for this also. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understand the Transatlantic Slave Trade, because you'll be able to watch it on demand. It's on sale right now, $60, regularly $130. But even after the course is over with, you can go back and watch the entire class as well. 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you'll be able to watch the entire course. So that's how our online classes are. Even after the class is over with, you don't lose your access to that course that you registered for. All right, let's continue. Okay, so this is taking place Saturday, February 4th, 2023, and you can register your children for the class. Well, the free lecture. I don't do a lot of cursing, things like that. My presentations aren't overly graphic, so I would say the content is PG-13. PG-13. Register your family for it also. Visit TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. So when we look at this year's theme for African American History Month, right? Black resistance. Black resistance is the annual theme. And there's been an annual theme going back to 1928. Some of these annual themes have dealt with the continent of Africa also. So this presentation I'm doing on Saturday will look at a history of resistance movements from African Americans over the last 200 years. We'll also look at the origins of Black History Month in Dr. Carter G. Woodson. We'll do an introduction to a new 12-week online history class that I'm teaching as well, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understand the Transatlantic Slave Trade. Now, when we look at Black resistance movements, African Americans have resisted historic and ongoing oppression in all forms, especially the racial terrorism of lynching, racial pogroms, and police killings since our arrival upon these shores. Now, the way they phrase it, this comes from a solace, since our arrival upon these shores. I will rephrase that and say since the arrival of Europeans on these shores, because one of the things I deal with in the class and one of the things we'll talk about in the lecture that I'm doing, African people have been in this land we call the United States of America going back at least 51,700 years. We were here in this land before Native Americans even came into existence. And that's research coming from people like Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. Okay. So we have to understand that. I hear people say things like, since we came here to these shores and things like this, and they want to put it at 1619 or what have you, right? And it's important to even understand that codified slave laws didn't even exist in any of the 13 colonies in 1619, okay? If we look at page 14 of Dr. David Imhotep's book, and he's a friend of mine, I've interviewed him 13, 14 times. He deals with a discovery in Allendale County, South Carolina, made in 2004 by Dr. Albert Goodyear, which deals with, they found 13 different types of evidence that thoroughly document an African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years ago, okay? And these are the Khoisan, who have the oldest DNA on the planet and come from Southern Africa. They're also, and they're the ancestors of the Ainu and the Twa. But they found artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, Egyptian writings, footprints in lava, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics, linguistics, painting, skull, skeleton structures, and tools. They found 13 different types of evidence that thoroughly documented an African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years. This is a picture of Dr. Albert Goodyear. Now, this is an article from ScienceDaily.com from November 18, 2004, called "New Evidence Puts Man in North America 50,000 Years Ago." So you can check out that article. But we have to understand that no, we did not first come to this land conquered and shackled in chains, uh, conquered by Europeans and shackled in chains and enslaved. No, no, we were here before Native Americans even came into existence. This was our land stolen from us. So the 1950s and 70s in the United States was defined by actions. Let me back up. These efforts have been to advocate for a dignified, self-determined life in a just democratic society in the United States and beyond the United States political jurisdiction. Okay. The 1950s and 70s in the United States was defined by actions such as sit-ins, boycotts, walkouts, strikes by African Americans and white allies in the fight for justice against discrimination in all sectors of society, from employment to education to housing, from employment to education to housing, in an effort to live and maintain and protect economic success. Black people have organized, planned violent insurrections against those who enslaved them, such as in Haiti, and armed themselves against murderous white mobs, as seen in Memphis, Tennessee in 1892, Rosewood, Florida, 1923, and New Orleans, 1900. Okay, like the Robert Charles riots in 1900 in New Orleans. And Robert Charles, his brother, he shoots like 27 people, kills a few white police officers. The Robert Charles riots in 1900. But also, when we look at the Red Summer in 1919, okay, now the second online class that I teach, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1800 to 1960, 1800 to 1968, we deal with the Red Summer 1919, okay? And I teach that class on Sundays. Right now, I teach that class on Sundays. That's at our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com as well. In the Red Summer 1919, you had over 25 major race riots in this country, okay, the year after World War I ended. And a lot of these white men went to fight in the war. When they came back, their jobs were taken by African Americans and immigrants who were here. And this exploded into racial conflicts all across the country. Additionally, some African Americans thought that the best way to resist was to self-liberate, as seen by the actions those who left the plantation system of Henry Adams and Benjamin Pap Singleton, when they led a mass exodus westward in 1879, and Bishop Henry McNeill Turner of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, who organized immigration to Liberia. In 1879, you have the Black Exodus, the Black Exodus of 1879 to Kansas. And you have about 6,000 African Americans migrating from Louisiana and Texas out to Kansas, okay? And in 1878, the 1878 statewide election in Louisiana, Democrats take back control of the state government. So you're going to have a lot of African Americans who are going to leave Louisiana, especially, fleeing white supremacy, white domestic terrorism, and they're going out west, and they go into Kansas looking for a better way of life. So we're going to deal with a lot of this on Saturday in my lecture. Okay, so African American business owners, we know African American History Month is here. We're looking for ways to bring on new customers, bring on new clients, and market to them. Email us at AHNshow@TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AHNshow@TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, to advertise with the African History Network. Our current promotion is buy 1 month, get 1 month free. Now, you may say, well, look, I want to take advantage of this promotion, but I'm not ready to advertise right now. I need to advertise in a week from now, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now. That's fine. You can secure your ad space today, because we have limited ad space. You can secure your ad space today and run your ads later, a week from now, 2 weeks from now, a month from now, what have you, when you're ready. Okay. Email us at TheAHNShow@TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And we have 3 different advertising packages to meet your needs. So we take your 30-second and 60-second commercial. If you don't have one, we create one for you, okay, and no additional charge. We take your 30-second, 60-second commercial. We put it into the rebroadcast of our shows, the African History Network show, and the broadcasts I do throughout the week. But also we put it into the audio podcast version of these broadcasts as well. And we're on 9 different audio podcast platforms also. Okay. iHeartRadio, Castbox, FM Player, TuneIn, 9 different audio podcast platforms. And so we reach people all across the country and around the world. Okay, so email us at TheAHNShow@TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. TheAHNShow@TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And let me bring that back up. Hold on. All right. And we'll get you started today. Also, be sure to check out the another broadcast that I've done recently here. This deals with why 80% of Black-owned businesses fail in the first 18 months or go out of business in the first 18 months. Check that out as well. Okay, we have that here on the African History Network, on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. If you like this type of information, give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. Also, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. And be sure to register for the free online lecture that I'm doing Saturday, February 4th, 2023, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, dealing with Black resistance movements. And Black resistance is the national annual theme for Black History Month 2023. We'll deal with Black resistance movements. We'll deal with the origins of Black History Month. And I'll give a overview of my new online class as well, 12-week online course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understand the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay. All right. So thanks for tuning in. Follow us here on Facebook and YouTube. Turn on live notifications so you know when we go live. Remember, right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you next time. Peace.